A very good evening to everybody watching. Thank you for making time and joining us tonight on the Evening Review. My name is Theo Mujoro, your host. Tonight on the show we are joined by Theo Mujoro. He is the Chief Electoral and Referenda Officer of the Electoral Commission of Namibia. Of course, it is now public information that he will be leaving the ECN very soon, and he is here to help us just understand why he's leaving and what his plans are. And as a matter of fact, how his journey at the helm of the institution was. Theo, it's always a pleasure talking to you, so thank you for making time. So we saw recently the list of people vying for the position that you occupy. And on that short list, your name doesn't exist, and it actually took us by surprise, all of us. What happened? What happened there?
Okay, now, Toivo, thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. No, indeed, you are right that I think, in fact, this coming Friday, we will have candidates being interviewed for the position that I currently hold. I think it's not an accident that my name is not appearing. It was a conscious decision that I took, having considered many, many factors. Not to seek reappointment or not to reapply. I decided consciously not to reapply. You know, I have joined the Electoral Commission back in the year 2001. At the time, I was 26 years old. I joined the Electoral Commission in the capacity of assistant to the then Director of Elections. At the time, it was Mr. Yoram Rukambe. And then I had just come from the National Assembly, where I worked as a media liaison officer. And then before I left the Assembly, I actually was a personal assistant to the late Dr. Mozeshi Tendero, former Speaker of the National Assembly. So I joined the Electoral Commission, and then after about 6-7 years, having worked as the assistant to the Director of Elections, I got a promotion. I was promoted to the position of a Deputy Director, Planning and Registration. And then moving forward, I think another 6 or 7 years, I was promoted again to the position of Director of Operations. I served in that capacity for about maybe 6 years. And then I applied for the position of Chief Electoral and Referenda Officer. So in total, Toivo, I have been with the Electoral Commission for more than 22 years, you know, combined. You know, so I'm completing my tenure now, my 5-year contract. And I think I really, I'm convinced that I have done my part. I think I have peace of mind that, and my conscience is very clear, that I've really made my contribution, you know, to, in terms of advancing and growing the institution. I think having operated at this level for the last almost 5 years now, I think I have done everything within my capacity. I think I have put everything on the table. It's not an easy job. And I sincerely believe that it's time that we have a fresh person, someone that comes with a fresh perspective, new ideas, you know, to be able to take the organization forward. So I think I've done my part.
It's a very rare take, Theo. We do not hear stuff like that. People saying they've done their part and do not seek reappointment. So that is quite a new one in our country. But you said you've considered a lot of factors. Could one of the factors be that you had no confidence of retaining the position if you had tried to get it?
No, definitely not one of my considerations. I believe that had I chosen to apply, I think I would have stood a very good chance to be reappointed in a position by virtue of my experience, obviously. You know, considering the fact that within about slightly over a year from now, we will be busy with our next electoral cycle. So I think my experience would matter, would come in handy in terms of navigating the organization through the political waters, if you like. I think I had considered mainly the fact that I have been there for way too long, you know. Like I said, I joined this organization when I was 26 years old. I am 48 years old right now. You know, I believe it's really time that we have a new captain to steer the ship. I also believe that it's time for me maybe to pursue other interests, also to serve the country through other institutions. I think I can still make a contribution and I can add value to other processes. I can perform in other spaces and venture into other things. Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Theo, when you were a director of operations, and that is also when a lot of us in the media really started to know you, and I thought that you actually did a brilliant job in that capacity. Very, very good job. 2019, late around, was it September when you became, when you took over the...
Actually 2018.
2018.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So the journey was not very easy, as you have admitted here and there. I'm remembering particularly 2019 when the election...
Very tough year.
Very tough year.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things that just happened during that time, I remember the EVMs that got lost at the SWAPO event. Apparently they fell off a trailer, and then there was, of course, after that election, the election was challenged in the court by Dr. Itula and others, saying that there was the use of EVMs without
paper trail
paper
and
trail.
all of that, yes.
And then, of course, again, was it this year or last year when there was an incident, again, big one, of the 117 laptops that got lost. So it hasn't been a particularly easy ride for you.
Not at all.
What can you tell us about some of these things? For the laptops in particular, I'm happy that you were pretty open about it. You called in stakeholders, you informed them. But, you know, it's been an incident after the other.
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
No, you are right. You know, when I took over from our former Chief Electoral Officer, Professor Isaac, I think we were just almost a year into the next cycle of elections. Unfortunately, me starting this new journey as Chief Electoral Officer coincided with some unfortunate incidents. This case, the issue of the EVMs, I think we don't have to go to the details of that. Looking back, I think we should have handled this matter better, at least from a PR standpoint. I think we should have been more proactive in terms of engaging the public, sharing the details of this unfortunate incident, because clearly I think it had a ripple effect as we moved and built up to the elections of 2019. I think a lot of questions were being asked around not only the effectiveness of using this technology in our elections, but also there were questions around the trust and credibility issues, which I believe greatly impacted the credibility of the organization and also the individuals running the organization, including myself. I think we had a hard time explaining ourselves in terms of what transpired. Of course, the elections came, and then the whole issue of the missing EVMs was compounded by the court case that you alluded to earlier, where the independent candidate and others, Dr. Itula and others at the time, took the ECN to court, challenging, the usage of the EVMs in our electoral processes without a simultaneous usage of what we call a voter-verified paper audit trail, or paper trail for short. I think we now know that there was a landmark Supreme Court judgment that basically prevented the Electoral Commission from using the EVMs if there is no simultaneous usage of the paper trail. Of course, and I think we have abided by that ruling of the Supreme Court. We have never used the EVMs at any point following that judgment. And I think for the foreseeable future also, including obviously the forthcoming national elections, we would be using manual ballot papers. So I think for now we have set aside the issue of the EVMs. I think at some point in the future, I believe the Commission would engage the Namibian nation through the relevant stakeholders, so that we decide in terms of the future of electronic voting in this country. Do we believe people have an appetite to vote by electronic means, or are people satisfied now that we have resorted to the usage of manual ballot papers? And I think all stakeholders obviously would have a say in terms of airing their views and expressing their positions with respect to that. So Toivo, 2019 was not an easy year, not just because of the issues around the EVMs, but I think generally, Toivo, there were a lot of things happening within the political environment over which the Commission had no control. And to a certain extent, that also impacted a lot of things. You remember that I think 2 weeks before the elections is when we had the Fishrot issue.
Yes.
At some point, I think I remember reading posters written election rot. So there were things happening within the political environment over which we had no control. But clearly, that also impacted a lot of things in terms of even public perceptions about the Electoral Commission, us as the individuals leading the organization, and also the processes. And I think particularly social media, made it very tough for some of us, because some of us were personally targeted, with insults and death threats and these type of things. That is what happened at the time. So it wasn't an easy experience for me personally, having been the Chief Electoral and Referenda Officer managing the operations of the organization.
And that's a very difficult one. I mean, I can allude to some of those things. I have, being an avid social media user myself, I've seen the attacks. And, so is it, let me, before I engage on that, just again on the EVM aspect, Mr. Mujoro, when you took over as head of ECN, were the EVMs already in use, or was it they were used for the first time under your leadership?
They had already been in use. In fact, we used the EVMs for the first time during the 2014 national elections and obviously the subsequent elections. So by the time I became Chief Electoral Officer, they were already in use. Yes.
So why was it just that nobody else challenged the use of these machines before, like Dr. Itula did, or why was? Because I don't understand how a machine that, if I understand its nature correctly, that doesn't produce proper evidence of actually how the voting took place. I mean, how was it allowed?
Okay, you see, at the time when we acquired the electronic voting machines from India, the concept of the paper trail, or what we call the voter verified paper audit trail, was nowhere in existence, including in India. So what would then happen is that you simply get into a ballot booth, you punch the button corresponding to your political party or your leader of your choice, and then you press the red button at the bottom of the ballot unit, and then that confirms your vote. It deposits your vote. Now, I think what brought about these uncertainties and the many questions around the viability and the trustworthiness of this technology is the fact that once you make your selection and you press the confirm button, there is no documentary evidence that proves that indeed that your vote was cast in respect to your political party or your candidate. That is why, and I think the Indians went through the same experience, and following that, they then introduced the paper trail concept. Unfortunately, at the time when we were, approaching the 2019 elections, we had already made the decision that the machines would be used in the format that they were without the paper trail, even though at least even 2 years before 2019, this talk was being, entertained about using the paper trail concept alongside these machines. But I think as an institution, I think we had no consideration to acquire that technology. And also, I think it's important that people understand that to acquire the paper trail technology to be able to use with the EVMs, it comes really at an astronomical cost. It doesn't come cheap. It could cost the taxpayer close to $100 million Namibian dollars. So it doesn't come cheap. So apart from the practical considerations of the technology, I think it's important that we also factor in the cost issue, in respect to these technologies.
Yeah, wonderful. We go for a very short break and then return with Theo Mujoro.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
We continue our conversation. Now, Mr. Mujoro, you mentioned just what you, at a personal level, what you've enjoyed in terms of people having everything, saying everything about you and your work. And again, it's very important that you mentioned the Fishrot element, because that was really problematic, and a lot of people feel that it might have affected the outcome of the election in the end. But of course, like you said, it's outside your domain. Is this what you meant then when you said in New Era recently that this job is not for the faint-hearted?
Yeah, the running elections, it's a process that involves or that entails a high level of political contestation. Not forgetting that there are reasons for that. The stakes are quite high. When you have candidates vying for the presidency, the competition is very intense. I think we can't talk about elections in Namibia without recognizing the fact that I think our political landscape has changed in terms of the dynamics. Looking at the fact that we now have more political parties that have joined the register of the Electoral Commission. You have a lot of divergent views. You see younger people coming to the forefront through different formations, contesting elections. So I think the landscape and the dynamics have changed clearly. This is something that I have personally observed since the year 2019, and I think it manifests itself even through by-elections. We have observed elections in the southern part of the country and other parts of the country. These are political realities that we can see on the ground. Personally, I think it's good for our democracy that you have more diverse views and opinions and different types of players within the political space. I think it's a good thing. I think it really makes our democracy vibrant, Now, it's not an easy job when you are placed in the middle of it all in terms of managing the process and ensuring that you try the best you can to satisfy the interest of everybody equally. It's not easy. It is not easy to manage politicians, to manage political parties, because I think when you are placed in that situation, nobody trusts you.
Yeah.
And everybody somehow believes that you are in bed with party Y or party X.
Yeah, yeah.
You would see people saying that, no, Mr. Mujoro, the Chief Electoral Officer, is favoring party X. But then you find that party X basically saying exactly the same thing, that you are actually just pretending or whatever, you're actually supporting party X, Y, or Z. So you become like a football that is being kicked by everybody, unfortunately. So it's not only about the difficulties around managing the politicians and the political parties, but I think importantly, managing and administering the process itself.
Yeah.
You see, Toivo, I say that the Achilles heels in terms of the election business, especially in our context, is where you have to recruit 15,000 people that you don't know, that for which you don't even have time to run them through a rigorous testing process in terms of assessing their credentials and their dedication and loyalty and their principles as people. And these are mostly young people with basic high school qualifications. You have about 10 days to provide training to these people, and then you deploy them into the most sensitive process in the country of running elections. You see, looking at the sheer size and the enormity and the complexity around the electoral process, I always say that with every election, you learn new lessons, and with every election comes new surprises. So part of the difficulty comes with managing the process itself.
Yeah.
Where you have these young people, you deploy them throughout the entire country in a very delicate and sensitive process. The scrutiny on the part of the stakeholders is very intense.
Yeah.
The media is there, and there are jitters all over the place. I always say that, unfortunately, mistakes are bound to happen somewhere, somehow. And when these mistakes occur, of course, it's important that as the election management body, you need to do whatever you can to be able to manage problems as they occur on the ground and keep these problems to a bare minimum so that they don't impact the process materially. So at the end of the day, it's a very complex process. It's very difficult. You don't have all the time in the world to train these individuals for like 3-5 weeks. You have to work within a budget. When you manage elections, everything is done and dictated to by the Electoral Act. There are certain things that can only happen after something has happened. You can't do certain things before something else happens. So everything in terms of the timing is really connected to and dictated to by the Act, by the provisions of the Electoral Act. So you only have one bullet to be able to deliver a credible process. So there are so many dynamics connected to running the election process. You have to manage the media. Everybody's on your case, so it's very taxing at the personal level. I've gone through a very unique experience in 2019. As I've said earlier on, it almost got personal. The amount of insults on social media, but also the calls that you get and all kinds of accusations, So it's important to stick to the principles, You need to behave and conduct yourself in a manner that is clearly non-partisan. You must maintain political neutrality in terms of your conduct and what you say, It's important that you really stick to those principles, so that you are seen and believed to be really non-partisan.
Absolutely. Perhaps the last question, Mr. Mujoro, then is when I read the article in New Era again with my friend Edward Mumbu, you said that currently there's no job offer on the table for you. You are simply going out of ECN and then start looking for other opportunities. Do you then think that you have done yourself a proper favor in those 5 years to demonstrate and put yourself out there as a competent man that can take on the next challenge?
No, absolutely. Not only competent, but also young and energetic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, no, of course, like I've said to Evo, it was a conscious decision. I think I'm at peace that I have taken this decision not to seek reappointment.
Yeah.
I think I've done my part, and I think I have just, sometimes you don't have to overstay, you know, at a place. I believe that the skills and the experience that I have acquired over the years enables me to serve through other institutions. You know, I think I have experience that is relevant to a number of important sectors in terms of democracy, governance, other spaces. I believe I can serve through other institutions, and I believe I can also venture into other spaces, new things that I can take on. So I think I've done myself a favor in terms of what I have done this far. I am indebted to the country and its people. I don't regret 1 second, 1 minute, 1 day that I have served in my capacity as a Chief Electoral Officer, but even in the other capacities that I have served the Electoral Commission. I think I have spent a great deal of my entire adult life with this organization.
Yeah.
I have grown, you know, I have done the best I could. And my conscience is very clear. I think I'm ready for other challenges, whether it's in the public sector, which is basically my academic orientation for that matter, but even in private sector, you know, spaces. I believe there are a lot of things that I can do. But I think it's also an opportunity for me to pause a little bit for self-reflections, pay attention to my family, try and consolidate my farming activities, and also maybe have some time to venture into, you know, the business sphere. You know, I think there are a lot of things that I can do, maybe before I take on maybe my next important challenge in terms of working for institutions.
Yeah, wonderful. Theo, it's always a pleasure talking to you, my man.
Thank you so much, bro. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that's Theo Mujoro. He's the outgoing chief of the Electoral Commission of Namibia. You know, sharing with us his journey over the past 22 or so years that has been at the ECN, including the last 5 that he's been actually in charge of the Electoral Commission. Thank you for watching.